Welcome to Stories with Murph. I am your aforementioned Murph and infinite jest enthusiast. Yes, that book that many college-age man has tried to read to impress girls with his intellectual superiority and really is just an ego trip is a very good book, and I love it. Today we're going to go ahead and finish up The Modest Proposal from Jonathan Swift. As I mentioned last time, Jonathan Swift wrote this as satire, and reason why I'm drawn to this title beyond its dark humor is that I once wrote a paper on it, or just Jonathan Swift in general, and the header I had for the essay, which was probably about 20 pages long, I couldn't find it. It was about 15 years ago when I wrote it. The satirist is the everyday preacher. I wish I could have found it so I could had derived the quote correctly. I looked on the internet and couldn't find any, the AI throws junk at you, and most of your, what was easily found in a lot of cases isn't so easily found anymore. I'm going to stop being an old person and read this second part of A Modest Proposal. And when I say, when I read it out loud here, Swift would have read this out loud in Parliament, a place with supposedly serious people. Coffee, coffee, coffee. I've too long digressed, and therefore shall return to my subject. I think the advantages by the proposal which I have made are obvious in many, as well as of the highest importance. For first, as I have already observed, it would greatly lessen the number of papists with whom we are yearly overrun, being the principal breeders of the nation, as well as our most dangerous enemies, and who stay at home on purpose with a design to deliver the kingdom to the pretender, hoping to take their advantage by the absence of so many good Protestants, who have chosen rather to leave their country than stay at home and pay tithes against their conscience to an episcopal curate. Secondly, the poorer tenants will have something valuable of their own, which by law may be made liable to a distress and to help to pay their landlord's rent. Their corn and cattle being already seized, and money a thing unknown. Thirdly, whereas the maintenance of 100,000 children from 2 years old and upwards cannot be computed at less than 10 shillings apiece per annum, the nation's stock will be thereby increased £50,000 per annum. Besides, the profit of a new dish introduced to the tables of all gentlemen of fortune in the kingdom who have any refinement and taste, and the money will circulate among ourselves, the goods being entirely of our own growth and manufacturing. Fourthly, the constant breeders, besides the gain of 8 shillings sterling per annum by the sale of their children, will be rid of the charge of maintaining them after the first year. Fifthly, this food would likewise bring great custom to taverns, where the vintners will certainly be so prudent as to procure the best recipes for dressing it to perfection, and consequently have their houses frequented all by all the fine gentlemen who justly value themselves upon their knowledge in good eating, and a skillful cook, who understands how to oblige his guests, will contrive to make it as expensive as they please. Sixthly, this would be a greater inducement to marriage, which all wise nations have either encouraged by rewards or enforced by laws and penalties. It would increase the care and tenderness of mothers towards their children when they were sure of a settlement for life to the poor babes, provided. It would increase the care and tenderness of mothers towards their children when they were sure of a settlement for life to the poor babes, provided in some sort by the public, to their annual profit instead of expense. We should soon see an honest emulation among the married women. Which of them could bring the fattest child to market? Men would become fond of their wives during the first of their pregnancy, as they are now of their mares and foal, their cows and calf, or sows when they are ready to farrow, not offer to beat them or kick them, as is too frequent practice for fear of miscarriage. Many other advantages might be enumerated. For instance, the addition of some 1,000 carcasses in our exportation of barreled beef, the propagation. I'm so good at this. Propagation of swine's flesh, and improvement in the art of making good bacon, so much wanted among us by the great destruction of pigs too frequent at our tables, which are no way comparable in taste or magnificence to a well-grown fat yearling child, which roasted whole will make a considerable figure at a Lord Mayor's feast or any other public entertainment. This is, and many others I omit, being studious in brevity. Supposing that 1,000 families in this city would be constant customers for infant's flesh, besides others who might have it at merry meetings, particularly at weddings and christenings, I compute that Dublin would take off annually about 20,000 carcasses. At the rest of the kingdom, where probably they will be sold somewhat cheaper, the remaining 80,000. I can think of no one objection that will possibly be raised against this proposal, unless it should be urged that the number of people will be thereby much lessened in their kingdom. This I freely own, and was indeed one principal design in offering it to the world. I desire the reader will observe that I calculate my remedy for this one kingdom of Ireland, and for no other that ever was, is, or I think ever will be called upon earth. Therefore let no man talk to me about their other expedients of taxing our absentees at 5 shillings a pound, of using neither clothes nor household furniture except what is of our own growth and manufacture, of utterly rejecting the materials and instruments that promote foreign luxury, of curing the expenses of pride, vanity, idleness, and gambling in our women, of introducing a vain parsimony, prudence, and temperance, of learning to love our country, wherein we differ from the Laplanders and the inhabitants of the Toppenbows, of quitting our animosities and factions, nor acting any longer like the Jews who were murdering one another at the very moment their city was taken. Great little anti-Semitism. Of being a little cautious not to sell our country and our conscience for nothing. Of teaching landlords to have at least one degree of mercy towards their tenants. Lastly, of putting a spirit of honesty, industry, and skill into our shopkeepers, who, if resolution could now be taken to buy only our native goods, would immediately unite to cheat and exact upon us in the price, the measure, and the goodness, nor could ever yet be brought to make one fair proposal of just dealing, though often and earnestly invited to do it. Therefore, I repeat, let no man talk to me of these and the like expedients, till he hath at some glimpse of hope that there will ever be some hearty and sincere attempt to put them into practice. But as to myself, having been wearied out for many years with offering vain, idle, visionary thoughts, and at length utterly despairing of success, I fortunately fell upon this proposal, which, as it is wholly new, so it hath something solid and real, of no expense and little trouble, full in our own power, and whereby we can incur no danger in disobliging England. For this kind of commodity will not bear exportation, and flesh being too tender consistence, to admit a long continuance in salt, although perhaps I could name a country which would be glad to eat up our whole nation without it. After all, I am not so violently, that was us, the nation. After all, I am not so violently bent upon my own opinion as to reject any offer proposed by wise men, which shall be found equally innocent, cheap, easy, and effectual. But before something of that kind shall be advanced in contradiction to my scheme, and offering a better, I desire the author or authors will be pleased to maturely consider 2 points. First, as things stand now, how they will be able to find food and raiment for 100,000 useless mouths and backs. And second, there being around 1 million of creatures in humane figure throughout this kingdom, whose whole subsistence put into a common stock would leave them in debt 2 million pounds of sterling, adding those who are beggars by profession to the bulk of farmers, cottagers, and laborers, with their wives and children, who are beggars in effect. I desire those politicians who dislike my overture, and may perhaps be so bold to attempt an answer, that they first ask the parents of these mortals whether they would not at this day think it is a great happiness to have been sold for food at a year old in the manner I prescribe, and thereby have avoided such a perpetual scene of misfortunes as they have gone through by the oppression of landlords, the impossibility of paying rent without money or trade, the want of common sustenance, with neither house nor clothes to cover them from the inclemencies of the weather, and the most inevitable prospect of entailing the like or greater miseries upon their breed forever. I profess in the sincerity of my heart that I have not the least personal interest in endeavoring to promote this necessary work, having no other motive than the public good of my country. By advancing our trade, providing for infants, relieving the poor, and giving some pleasure to the rich. I have no children by which I can propose to get a single penny, the youngest being 9 years old, and my wife past childbearing. If our Congress on either side had the creativity and courage to write something like this today, I don't know if they would lose their job, but they would be doing it right. That job. Thank you for joining me with Story Times with Murph. I have been your aforementioned Murph. What else do I have? Oh, yes. Thank you. Bye, and be cool.